What's up? Jonathan here with a commander tech of Gargos Various Watcher. It's a 6-drop that has Vigilance and Hydra spells you can cast cost 4 colorless mana less to cast. And whenever a creature you control becomes the target of spell, Gargos fights up to one target creature you don't control. It's a 8/7. There is 28 other creatures. Let's get started. First is Lime War Elf. It's a 1-drop. Tap it to add a forest. It's a 1/1. Next is Elvish Mystic. It's a 1-drop. Tap it to add a forest. It's a 1/1. Next is Abdor Elf. It's a 1-drop. Tap it. Untap target land, and it's a 1/1. Next is Wall of Blooms. It's a 2-drop with Defender. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. It's a 0/4. Next is Whisper of the Wilds. Tap it, add a forest to your mana pool. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater instead, add 2 forests to your mana pool. It's a 0/2. Next is Skin Shifter. It's a 2-drop. Tap a forest. Choose one until end of turn. It's a 4/4 Rhino. And with Trample, or a 2/2 Bird with Flying, or a 0/8 Plant. Activate this ability only once each turn. It's a 1/1. Next is Lime War Tribe. It's a 3-drop. Tap it, add 3 force. It's a 3/3. Next is Cirque the Hunt Caller. It's a 4-drop. It has, at the beginning of combat on your turn, if creatures you control have total power 8 or greater, target creature you control gains haste until the end of turn. It's a 5/4. Next is Polcorius World Eater. It's a 4-drop that has tap XX and a forest. Monstrosity X. When it becomes monstrous, it deals X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures your opponents control. Each of those creatures deal damage equal to its power to it. It's a 5/5. Next is Carven Cariad. It's a 3-drop defender. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. It's a 2/5. Next is Web Weaver Challengeling. It has Challengeling. This card is every creature type, and it has reach, and when it enters the battlefield, if there are 3 or more creature cards in your graveyard, you gain 5 life. It's a 3/5. Next is Pargon the Intral Wilds. It's a 4-drop. Other green creatures you control get +1/+1, and you could tap it. Tap a forest, and another target green creature you control gains trample until the end of turn. It's a 2/2. Next is Java Nature's Hurled. That's a 4-drop with Flash You may cast green creature spells as though they had flash. It's a 4/4. Next is Phyrexian Hydra. It's a 5-drop with Infect, and if damage would be dealt to it, prevent that damage, put a -1 counter on it. For each 1 damage prevented this way, it's a 7/7. Next is Hero's Bane. It's a 5-drop. It enters the battlefield with 4/1/1 counters on it. And tap 4 mana. Put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is its power. It's a 4/4. Next is Genis. It's a 5-drop and has, at the beginning of your upkeep, if Genis is in your graveyard, you may pay 3 mana. If you do, return target creature from your graveyard to your hand. It's a 4/4. Next is Unvered Hydra. It's a 6-drop with reach, and its power and toughness are equal to the numbers of lands you control. And when it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a land card, put it onto the battlefield tab, then shuffle your library. Next is Nisian Wild's Revenger. It's a 6-drop. It has Tribute 6. And when it enters the battlefield, if tribute wasn't paid, you may have it fight another target creature. It's a 6/6. Next is Hydra Omoviner. It's a 6-drop. And whenever it deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to each other opponent. It's a 8/8. Next is Orbran Reef Hydra. It's a 6-drop with trample and landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on it. If it's a forest, instead put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. It's a 5/5. Next is Hydra Broodmaster. It's a 6-drop with XX, 1 force, monstrosity X. And when it becomes monstrous, put XX green Hydras creatures tokens onto the battlefield. It's a 7/7. Next is Hungering Hydra. It's an X and 1 force. It enters the battlefield with X 1/1 counters on it, and it can't be blocked by more than 1 creature. When it is dealt damage, put that many 1/1 counters on it. Next is Voricious Hydra. It's X and 2 force, and it has trample. It enters the battlefield with X 1/1 counters on it. When it enters the battlefield, choose 1. Double the number of +1/+1 counters on it, or it fights target creature you don't control. It's a 0/1. Next is Lifeblood Hydra. It's X and 3 force. It has trample and enters the battlefield with X 1/1/1 counters on it. And when it dies, you gain life and draw cards equal to its power. Next is Mistcutter Hydra. It's X and 1 force. It can't be countered. It has haste and protection from blue, and it enters the battlefield with X 1/1 counters on it. Next is Van Basswood Hydra. It costs X and 2 forests. It enters the battlefield with X 1/1 counters on it, and when it dies, you may distribute any number of +1/+1 counters equal to the number of +1/+1 counters on Basswood Hydra among any number of creatures you control. Next is Genius Hydra that costs X and 2 forests. When you cast it, reveal the top X cards of your library. You may put a non-land permanent card with converted mana cost X or less from among them onto the battlefield. Then shuffle the rest into your library. And Genus Hydra enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. Next is Whipping Tongue Hydra. It's a 6-drop with reach. When it enters the battlefield, destroy all creatures with flying. Put +1/+1 counters on it for each creature destroyed this way. It's a 4/4. Okay, so that's all the other creatures. Next is going to be Vivian, Champion of the Wilds. It's a 3-drop planeswalker. You may cast creature spells as though they had flash. +1 loyalty until your next turn. Up to one creature gains vigilance and reach. Her -2. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Exile 1 face down and put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. For as long as it remains exiled, you may look at the top at that card, and you may cast it if it's a creature card. She comes with 4 loyal counters on her. Next is Unbound Flourishing. It's a 3-drop enchantment. Whenever you cast a permanent spell with a mana cost that contains X, double the value of X. Whenever you cast a instant or sorcery spell or activate an ability, if that spell's mana cost contains X, copy that spell or ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. Next is Boom Pile. It's a 4-drop artifact. Tap it, flip a coin. If you win the flip, destroy all non-land permanents. Next is Wild Growth. It's a 1-drop enchantment. Enchant land. Whenever enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional forest. Next is Overgrowth. It's a 3-drop enchantment. Enchant land. Whenever enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional 2 forest. Next is Sorcerous Route. Sorcerous Route. It's a 4-drop sorcery. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards and or gate cards. Put them onto the battlefield. Tap. Then shuffle your library. Next is Explosive Vegetation. Sorcery. should be 4-drop. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards. Put them onto the battlefield tap. Then shuffle your library. Next is Cultivate. It's a 3-drop sorcery. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards. Reveal those cards and put them onto the battlefield tap and the other into your hand. Then shuffle your library. Next is Cordam's Reach. It's a 3-drop sorcery. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards. Reveal those cards. Put one onto the battlefield tap and the other into your hand. Then shuffle your library. Next is Rampant Growth. It's a 2-drop sorcery. Search your library for a basic land card. Put it onto the battlefield tap. Then shuffle your library. Next is Sky Shard Claim. It's a 4-drop. Search your library for up to 2 forest cards. Put them onto the battlefield. Then shuffle your library. Next is Wilderness Reclamation. It's a 4-drop enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, untap all lands you control. Next is Colossal Majesty. It's a 3-drop enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. Next is Elemental Bond. It's a 3-drop enchantment. Whenever a creature with power 3 or greater enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card. Next is Shamanic Revelation. It's a 5-drop sorcery. Draw a card for each creature you control. You gain 4 life for each creature you control with power 4 or greater. Next is Guardian Project. It's a 4-drop enchantment. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it doesn't have the same name as another creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard, draw a card. Next is Uncage the Menagerie. Tap X and 2 force for a sorcery. Search your library for up to X creature cards with different names than each have converted mana cost X. Reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle your library. Next is Life Crafter's Bestiary. It's a 3-drop artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you may pay a force. If you do, draw a card. Next is Pattern of Rebirth. It's a 4-drop enchantment. Enchant creature. Whenever an enchanted creature dies, that creature's controller may search their library for a creature card. Put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle their library. Next is Harmons. It's a 4-drop sorcery. Draw 3 cards. Next is Overwhelming Stampede. It's a 5-drop sorcery. Until the end of turn, creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. Next is Expiring Call. It's a 3-drop instant. Draw a card for each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it. Those creatures gain indestructible until the end of turn. Next is Solidarity of Heroes. It's a 2-drop instant. It costs 2 mana more to cast for each target beyond the first. Choose any number of target creatures. Double the number of +1/+1 counters on each of them. Next is Blooming Defense. It's a 1-drop instant. Target creature you control gets +2/+2 and gains hexproof until the end of turn. Next is Overrun. It's a 5-drop sorcery. Creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until the end of turn. Next is Rancor. It's a 1-drop enchant creature. Enchant creature gets +2/+0 and has trample. When Rancor is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return Rancor to its owner's hand. Next is Roar of Challenge. It's a 3-drop sorcery. All creatures able to block target creature this turn do so. That creature gains indestructible until the end of turn if you can control a creature with power 4 or greater. Next is Larger Than Life. It's a 2-drop sorcery. Target creature gets +4/+4 and gains trample until the end of turn. Next is Predator's Report. It's a 3-drop instant. Choose target creature you control. You gain life equal to that creature's power plus its toughness. Next is Consigned to Dust. It's a 3-drop instant. This spell costs 3 more to cast for each target beyond the first. Destroy any number of target artifacts and or enchantments. Next is Creeping Revelations. It's a 5-drop sorcery. Choose a permanent type. Return all cards of the chosen type from your graveyard to your hand, and it has flashback for 7 mana. Next is Rowan's Monument. It's a 3-drop legendary artifact. Green creature spells you cast cost 1 colorless mana less to cast. Whenever you cast a creature spell, target creature you control gets +2/+2 and gains trample until the end of turn. Now it's just the lands, and it should be just 38 basic lands. And let me know what you think of the deck down below on the comments, and thank you for watching.